Good morning, River Park. This morning I'm thinking about Lent and hoping to help us focus our hearts on Jesus during Lent. I think in Lent we make two rather classic mistakes. One of the mistakes we make is that we start looking at Jesus' suffering, and we think that Lent is all about intentionally stepping into suffering ourselves. And so maybe we give up simple conveniences. We give up things like chocolate or caffeine, or we take a media fast, or just find ways of inconveniencing ourselves. I think this misses the point in part because these things tend to be quite small, but largely because it focuses on suffering for its own sake and really forgets about the bigger picture, which is that Jesus is with us in the suffering of our lives, both the consequences of the actions we choose and the suffering that we don't choose for ourselves, yet find ourselves in. The second mistake that I think we often make during Lent is that when we do see suffering and when we do see problems around us, we acknowledge them and then very quickly look for the right person to blame. Perhaps we blame ourselves for the situation we're in. Perhaps we blame other people for the pain that they cause. The problem with quickly looking for blame is again twofold. In one, it takes a wicked, very complex, multifactorial problem and just pins it all on one person. So that's a reductionistic or overly simplistic. But also, the greater part of that problem is that it turns people into a problem. And we know from Scripture that people are not the problem. That in fact, God has gone very far to show us that people are the goal of God's redemptive work, not a problem that he seeks to overcome. So, given our temptation to lose focus on Jesus, either by looking at small, insignificant things and focusing on suffering itself, or by looking on bigger things and then trying to blame others or ourselves, I want to encourage us again this Lent to keep our focus on Jesus, to not lose sight of what's most important. In Lent, when we find ourselves in suffering, when we experience wicked problems that have many factors, even that we contribute to ourselves, I invite you to pause, to reflect, to wonder at how Jesus is present with you in the midst of that suffering, in the midst of that problem. And then to look for and hope for what God is calling you to do in response, and first in your own heart, and then together in our world. And because we sadly often have less impact in our world than we would like to think, it's often a good place to begin with ourselves and working on ourselves. So, a few words for reflection that I hope are encouraging to you and give you food for thought this Wednesday morning. May God bless you, and look forward to gathering together for worship again this weekend, this Sunday, as we look at Lamentations 3. And remember that all of these things, these wicked problems, it's all personal. And God meets us in personal ways in the midst of it. Have a blessed rest of your week.